This special episode of ReActivated, I get fired up. So tonight, I did something I haven't done in a while. Something that caused me to come to my computer and record this special episode and release it as soon as it's ready because I don't know how to handle this anymore. Thing is I sat down and I listened to the president address the nation. And before I was even halfway through the speech, I was reminded of why I'm here, why I'm doing any of this, why I'm talking to you, why I keep coming back to this idea that maybe self-reflection is still the only real path that we have back to common ground. Tonight, I remembered why that fire in me started burning again. And not just burning, but burning with conviction, with urgency, with the sense that this matters now more than ever. Because the truth is, what I heard tonight didn't just make me think about politics, it made me think about us, about who we've become, about what we reward and what we are willing to tolerate, about how easy it has to become to point outward before we ever look inward. And that's why I'm here. Now, let me be very clear about this. We are in the midst of a constitutional crisis, and not enough of you are taking that seriously. We literally had a presidential administration go before the Supreme Court and make the argument that the executive branch should not have to follow every judicial order. We have an administration that is doing things so quickly and so out of bounds that we don't know how to react fast enough, and irreparable harm is being caused before anything can be fixed. And we're seeing this again and again play out in different ways, in different areas, whether it be foreign or domestic, whether it be immigration or the economy. And that's why I'm here, because I don't think that we can do this very much longer. If we're ever going to find our way back to sanity, back to decency, back to any real sense of shared purpose, it's not going to start with louder slogans. It's not going to start with better spin or better messaging. It's not going to start with another viral clip, another fundraising email, which it's the end of the quarter, so I got a bunch more. Another perfectly crafted talking point designed to make one side cheer and the other side rage. It's going to start with the harder thing, honesty, responsibility, self-examination. That's the work. And tonight reminded me exactly why I felt called to it in the first place, because over the last 9 years, I've been asked again and again to get back in the game, get back in the struggle, speak, to engage, to re-enter the fight, because as people told me more than once, my voice was needed. Well, here it is. Here's my voice. And tonight, I was reminded of something I don't think we can afford to keep ignoring. There's a disconnect between the American people and the people that are governing them. A real disconnect, a moral disconnect, a human disconnect, a lived, experienced disconnect. Because how can we expect leaders who have never truly struggled to understand what struggle actually does to a family? How can we expect people who have never gone to bed hungry to fully understand what it means when a child does? Now, let me be clear about this. These are not opinions. 1 in 5 children in America are facing food insecurity. Now, how can we expect people who have never had to choose between rent and groceries to understand what that choice does to a person's mind, to their dignity, to the atmosphere in home, to the way stress settles into your body and it never really leaves? How do we expect people who have always had a cushion beneath them to understand the terror of living one missed paycheck away from everything falling apart? And this is the part of what has been eating at me, because too many of the people we elect to govern have become so insulated from ordinary life. They can't even begin to grasp how the policies they enact actually land on the people forced to live under them, not in theory, in reality, in our kitchens, in the apartment complexes, in the school pickup lines, in emergency rooms, in grocery store aisles, in the quiet panic of parents doing math in their heads that never adds up. This is the country that millions of Americans are living in. And yet, so much of our political class speaks like none of that is real, or worse, like it's acceptable collateral in the pursuit of ideology, image, or power. And that's where this gets even darker, because it isn't just that they're disconnected. It's that so many of them are so desperate to keep power that they have convinced ordinary Americans that the real enemy is each other, not corruption, not greed, not institutional cowardice, but not a political system that rewards performance more than principle. No, each other. We're the problem. Your neighbor is a threat. The other side of the aisle is a threat. My Republican next door neighbor is my enemy. The people voting differently than you are the threat. The people watching a different news channel are the threat. The people with different cultural instincts, different fears, different blind spots, different languages, those people are the threat. And once you get a population to believe that, you can manipulate them almost indefinitely. Because when people are afraid, angry, and humiliated, they're easy to direct, easier to bait, easier to divide, easier to radicalize, easier to keep emotionally activated and spiritually exhausted. And that, my friends, is exactly the environment we are living in. This whole political atmosphere, the division, the animosity, the contempt, the suspicion, the endless outrage didn't build itself. It was cultivated, fed, rewarded, monetized, weaponized. It's turned into an identity. It's turned into an entertainment. It's turned into a business model, turned into a strategy. And the hard truth is, we're not innocent in any of it. That part matters, because it would be easy to do a whole episode blaming politicians, media figures, institutions, parties, and power brokers. And to be clear, they deserve a great deal of the blame. And to be fair, there are a few statesmen that are still out there, still really trying to do the work of the people. But if I stop there, then I'm doing the very thing I claim that this show exists to resist. I'm pointing outward before looking inward. And that is exactly the habit that is keeping us trapped, because somewhere along the way, too many of us got conditioned to react before reflecting, to speak before thinking, to condemn before understanding, to assume the worst before asking questions, to confuse moral seriousness with moral superiority, to confuse cynicism with wisdom, to confuse cruelty with strength. And once that happens, once that becomes normal, we stop seeing each other clearly. We stop listening. We stop questioning our own side. We stop interrogating our own motives. We stop examining our own ego, our own resentment, our own appetite to feel righteous. And then we become easy to use. It's one of the deepest convictions behind this podcast. If you cannot examine yourself, someone else will gladly exploit the parts of you that remain unexamined. Your anger, your fear, your pride, your loneliness, your humiliation, your tribal instincts, your desire to belong, your need to feel morally certain, all of it, it can be used, and all of it is being used. And that's why I keep coming back to self reflection. Not because it's soft, not because it's passive, not because it's some abstract self help slogan designed to make people feel calm while the world burns. No. I come back to self reflection because it's one of the very few things left that can actually interrupt manipulation. It makes you harder to control, harder to provoke, harder to deceive, harder to turn against your fellow citizens on command, because once you start really examining yourself honestly, painfully, and consistently, you begin to notice things. You begin to notice your outrage is being played. You begin to notice when your ego is dressing itself up as conviction. You begin to notice when your need to be right is stronger than your desire to understand. You begin to notice when you are participating in the very culture you claim to hate. And that matters. It matters personally. It matters relationally, politically, nationally, because no country can remain healthy when people have become this easy to divide. No democracy can survive if enough of its citizens lose the capacity for humility, for restraint, for nuance, and moral courage. No political system gets healthier simply because one party defeats the other. That is one of the great lies of our time, that if we can just beat them, silence them, shame them, remove them, overpower them, then somehow everything gets better, but it doesn't. Because if the same insecurity, vanity, greed, cruelty, and appetite for domination still lives in us, then all we've done is change who gets to wield them. That's not renewal. It's just rotation. I think deep down, a lot of Americans know this. I think people are exhausted, not just financially, not just politically, spiritually. Aren't you tired of being manipulated? Aren't you tired of being lied to? Tired of being told who to hate? Tired of being treated like consumers of outrage instead of citizens capable of conscience? And beneath all of that exhaustion, I think there's also grief, real grief. Grief over what this country feels like now, over what public life has become, how much trust has been lost. Grief over how many people no longer believe that decency, truth, and good faith can actually survive in American life. I feel that grief too. And I think it started quite a few years ago. But here's the thing, I don't want to stay there. And I don't want this show to stay there, because grief, if it's honest, can become clarity. And clarity can become responsibility. And responsibility can become action. Not performative action, not self-righteous action, not action rooted in ego and spectacle, but real action. The kind that starts with asking better questions. Questions like, what am I rewarding? What am I tolerating? What am I becoming? How have I let myself become shaped by this? How often have I contributed to the very atmosphere I say I despise? How often have I chosen reaction over reflection? How often have I mistaken certainty for truth? How often have I demanded integrity from leaders while excusing the absence of it in myself? That is where this has to begin. Not because personal responsibility is the only thing that matters, but because it is the one thing none of us can outsource. We can't outsource our conscience. We can't outsource our character, our honesty, the work of becoming less reactive, less manipulative, less cruel, less easy to weaponize. And if enough people refuse that work, then no policy wins are ever going to save us. None. Because we will keep reproducing the same sickness in different forms. That's the reason why I'm here. Not to pretend I'm above any of this, not to posture like I've transcended the culture while still talking about the culture, because I haven't. I've been shaped by it too, wounded by it too. I've been pulled into ego by it too, and I've been pulled into anger by it too. I've been pulled into the illusion that being intense is the same thing as being right, and it isn't. And one of the reasons I'm speaking now is because I know what it's like to feel that fire in you and not always know how to channel it into a healthy direction. I know what it is to care deeply and still be wrong in the way you carry that care. I know what it is to want change and still have to confront the ways you yourself have fed the problem. That's part of why ReActivated exists, because I don't think we need more detached commentary from people pretending they're untouched by the mess. I think we need more honesty, more humility, more moral seriousness, more people willing to say this is broken, and I am not exempt from examining how I have participated in the brokenness. That to me is where credibility starts. Not with perfection or with truth. And tonight, listening to the president speak, I remembered something important. That fire, in me, it was never really gone. It was just waiting for a moment that I would see clearly again that this is just not about politics. This is about character, truth, conscience. It's about whether we are still capable of becoming the kind of people who can live in a free society without tearing each other apart. It's about whether we can stop treating one another like abstractions and start remembering that most people are carrying burdens we know nothing about. It's about whether we can build a culture where honesty matters more than spin, where courage matters more than branding, where responsibility matters more than winning. Maybe that sounds too ambitious. Maybe I'm naive, but I don't care, because what feels truly naive to me right now is believing that more hatred is going to heal hatred. What feels naive is believing that more humiliation is going to produce dignity. What feels naive is believing that a country can survive indefinitely when the people inside it are being trained to despise one another more with every passing year. Something else is required now, something deeper. And I believe that deeper thing begins in the same place real change almost always begins, with truth, repentance, humility, self-examination, the willingness to confront what is false in us before we spend all our energy condemning what is false in everybody else. That is not weakness. That is discipline. That is maturity. That is the beginning of wisdom. And maybe if enough of us are willing to do it, that is also the beginning of common ground. Not fake unity, not shallow agreement, not pretending our differences do not matter, but something sturdier, a shared commitment to truth, to decency, a shared refusal to let ourselves be turned into permanent enemies for the benefit of people who profit from our division. That is what this fight is for. That is what I want this show to be about. And that is why I'm here. If you've been wondering what this podcast really is, if you've been wondering what sits underneath all of this, underneath the politics, the culture, the frustration, the reflection, the urgency, this is it. I'm here because I still believe we can become better than what this environment has trained us to be. I'm here because I still believe common ground is possible, but only if we're willing to confront ourselves first. I'm here because I'm tired of watching power feed on division while ordinary people suffer the consequences. I'm here because tonight reminded me that silence is no longer the right response. My voice is needed. So here it is. This is my voice. And this is ReActivated.